Hey everybody, what's up? It's about 3:27 and I'm back again with another review here. And this one is Dan Drazen's review of 225. It's 225, the anniversary issue, which was released in July of 2001. That's the difference between, that's not the difference, but that's the thing about him too. He'll also tell you what month it came out as well. Now, as I said before in the previous review, he does compliment on the cover and everything. So, this is what he says about the cover. Pat Spazit, or Spaz, if you will. Pat Spazit, or Spaz cover. The gang's all here, but for how long? Everybody's got the game face on, no smiles, except Sonic. But Spaz used like a number 5 pencil or something, because you really have to look to see it. In other words, you got to really look to see that smile. And whose idea was it to do an American flag motif on the left border? Because nothing is as American as a comic book death chest. Because nothing is as American as a comic book death cheat. Alright, now continuing on his review, and I quote Dan Drazen for 225. Previously in, okay, I know that the book has a serious bent towards recapping what's been going on for the benefit of any noobs who happen to be browsing any given issue for the first time. That's the nature of serializing storytelling. That's the nature of serializing or serialized storytelling. Sorry about that. I understand that. But here, they've essentially hit some of the high points from the past 25 issues. I say some because the year-long Iron Dominion arc merits only 3 lousy paragraphs. And that's not even taking into consideration what happened during the 4-issue Journey to the East supplemental arc in Sonic Universe. But that doesn't matter, because the events in this issue, he puts caps and he spells out this with caps, in this issue takes center stage. And to, in caps, really rub it in, we get a page of hints and clues being dropped into the comic over the past year or so. But let's get to the title. One Step Forward. Story by Ian Flynn, artwork Tracy Yardlin, ink Terry Austin, color Matt Hearns, lettering John E. Workman, editor Paul Kaminsky, editor-in-chief Victor Gorlick, El Presidente Mike Polithro, and of course Sega licensing representatives Cindy Chow and Jerry Chu. And continuing on with Dan Drazen's review, and I quote, "Now that Eggman has everyone's attention, our heroes respond to the situation with a page full of talk. Except in Amy Rose's case, where she resorts to screaming at Jeffrey, who in typical fashion doesn't give a straight explanation to anyone about anything. Level-headed as always, Sal proposes that Naga stop trying to take over the kingdom while the current Wonder Weapon is up and running. Nagas agrees and takes the opportunity to leave in a whirlwind while Sally decides who's riding which plane. Nobody calls shotgun. Well, Sally decides who's riding in which plane. Nobody calls shotgun. She also demonstrates that she believes in the old line about keeping one's friends close and one's enemies closer, i.e., Jeffrey is coming along. So while Tails pilots the Tornado with Sonic and Sally in the cheap seats, everyone else is aboard the Freedom Fighter Special. Amy Rose, who's left to guard Jeff, shows no initiative and passes up a chance to loosen some of his teeth on general principle. In other words, he's stating that he or she has an opportunity to probably knock some sense into him, but she doesn't. We then get a peekaboo inside the death egg. Apparently they're doing this on the cheap because the only minions on display are Snively and Linduff, and they're not observing the Indian identical wardrobe dress code. Although Eggman is a bit surprised that Naugus is putting in an appearance, he issues a standard order to shoot at anything that does not look like a blue hedgehog. Outside the egg, Naugus hits it with a dose of crystalline magic and nothing happens. Believe it or not, that, and that is spelled in caps, that is the extent of Naugus's role in this story, except for one lousy reaction shot at the end. Instead of asking what sorcery is this, he may as well have just said, that's all I got. Talk about useless. Sally, meanwhile, is proving that there's something under all that auburn head fur by telling Tails to look for anything unusual on the other side and near the top of the dome, which he finds is a really cheap patch job where the crew broke in 26 issues ago. So Tails uses his air-to-air pass key to make a way in for Sonic and Sally. And having been through the infamous Endgame arc, Sonic 47 to 50, Sonic and Sally know enough to get the kissing done up front. Once inside, Eggman begins rubbing it in by sending a silver spot to repair the hull breach from the inside, thus demonstrating that the really obvious outside patch was an Eggman welcome mat. Sally checks in with Nicole, who's gone back to the home office, i.e. Sally's handheld, but she's keeping her focus on the chamber. But she's keeping her focus on the job, which Eggman doesn't make any easier by opening the door to a chamber they've missed the last time through. After the risky bit of repertoire, Eggy brings out the sub-boss of this installment, a supersized Silver Sonic. Sonic is clearly looking forward to tangling with this bot. Sally clearly isn't. She also gets the feeling that Eggman is using this to run out the clock. Eggman obligingly checks in with a page full of explanation, or with a page full of exploitation. Then Snively phones in to tell us and Unc that stage 1 of the recon is ready to go. And now, the death cheat. Sally heads for an exit corridor, but is stopped short by some old school ordnance. You know, it's old school because it goes blam 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 instead of skolorch, or whatever sound effect Archie Comics is using for non-projectical weaponry these days. This gets Sonic's attention, which earns him a love tap from the supersized Silver Sonic. Sonic goes to investigate the shooting. Eggman pushes the giant ominous red button, and we've lost the cable again. Okay, alright, so basically it sounds like he's not really too thrilled about this, but we'll look at the scores here. And he starts with the head score, and boy does he got a lot to say about that. So let's start with the head score. Yeah, and if this goes in two parts, I apologize. But let's start with the head score. Remember back in Sonic 210, editorial more or less asked the fans to submit Sonic/Sally art. Sure, they posted some examples of what they received, and they could have come across more examples at DeviantArt or for Idiot or any Sonic fan site. They never talked about how much they got. I'm guessing lots. Of course, we only saw what editorial wanted us to see in the fan art section, and it doesn't get there by accident. What I'm trying to say is, even if you've never experienced the Endgame debacle, we're looking at another Sally death cheat here. got 5 minutes to go on this, and then I'll probably have to do a second part. If I can get the next page here. Alright, here we go. 2 major clues. I think that's right. Yeah. 2 major clues. 1, Sally's goggles, which she never wore until now. Why now, all of a sudden? Because the comic needed a red herring to set up the death sheet, along with a pencil drawing that teased the fate of some victim or another, or some victim or other. The shadow goggles here take the place of an actual body. We went through this in Endgame's Shadow as well. Archie Comics had to release a dummy cover for Sonic number 51, the first post-Endgame issue for the distributing media. And they did, but it was a fake cover with the figure of Sally obscured in order to keep from giving the game away. Clue 2. Clue 2, which appeared a few issues ago, was Sally's ordered use of a warp ring to commute to the other side of the planet. So she could have logged some exploitation time with Khan. So she could log some exploitation time with Khan. Frankly, it would be just like this comic to have that be the deluxe ex maca that saves her this time. That's how I bet. That's how I bet. Anyway. Well, apparently when he did this review, he was wrong. There's a third possibility, but it's so cliched and illogical that Archie should be ashamed of themselves if in fact they resorted to it. Let the record show that Sally has Nicole in the handheld open and running when she stares down the barrel of the weaponry. So there would seem to be a possibility that Nicole would assume her bodily form and jump into the line of fire, taking one at least for the team. But that wouldn't even be a death cheat, because it wouldn't be a death. Nicole could always reboot herself in Sally's handheld if something happened to her temporal manifestation. After all, in the story that started all, Stargazing, the proto-Nicole hadn't yet figured out how to maintain herself and knew that she was going to die. So Sally kept company with her until the end. So that Valiant cover could just as well show Nicole, or at least a physical manifestation of her. Reason out instead of bleeding out. Which would really, and he puts in caps, which would be a really cheap way out of this. Remember when the stories were about something? The Thicker the Water arc is a good example. Primarily, it was about Sonic and Bunny chartering, of course, between the demands of the Legionnaires, whose commander turns out to be one of Bunny's long-lost relatives, and those of the disruptive or sandblast freedom fighters. It also set up the plot where Mighty and his long-lost sister Matilda will wander Mobius forever, just missing each other. I say that because with Ian springing a recon on us, you can kiss any chance of them finding each other goodbye. This story has an air of impatience about it, as if Ian just can't wait to rev up the recon. You can sense in it Naga's attempt to impact the Death Egg. In the business with the patch that Sonic and Sally's patch that's Sonic and Sally's way in. But when the recon itself kicks in, that's rather lovely spread over 2 pages, as every plot development up to this point, you know, all the ones listed on the inside of the gatefold cover, get put into the cardboard boxes and buried beneath styrofoam peanuts. Okay, so we've got the stage set for Sonic Genesis arc. Which consists of 4 issues of let's change the subject just when something really interesting happens. So now it's a matter of waiting for 230. Unless the Sonic Genesis arc is really, really good, we'll see. Head score is 5, and I will continue on in
Part 2.